Good evening. It is June 21st, 2017, and I would like to call to order the board meeting and remind everyone to please use your microphones when speaking and to turn them off when you're finished. Thank you. Commissioners present are Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Duggan, Commissioner Doan, and myself, Commissioner Schmidt. Next, we will have reports by the CEO and management staff.
Good evening, President Schmidt, members of the board. We will kick off the meeting, as we always do, with a safety minute presented this evening by Paul Matthews, our Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, President Schmidt, Commissioners. Tonight I want to talk about a movement, an initiative that's really around the country called Move Over. It's to protect our first responders as they provide assistance to motorists disabled on the road or otherwise engaged in emergency activities. The initiative requires that we move over one lane when we approach an emergency situation. I have a quick
Every
video.
year, thousands of law enforcement officers are injured or killed by passing vehicles on our nation's roads and highways. These tragedies don't have to happen. Whenever an emergency vehicle has its lights on, move over away from the emergency vehicle. If you can't change lanes because of traffic, or if you're traveling on a two-lane road, slow down at least 20 miles per hour below the posted speed limit.
Help protect the officers who protect you. Please move over, and if you can't, then slow down. It's the law.
So remember, when approaching any type of police car or other emergency vehicle pulled over on the roadside with emergency lights flashing, in Oregon, you must move over one lane. If you can't do so safely, you're required to reduce your speed by 5 miles per hour in Oregon, not the 20 that they suggest there. Regardless, provide as much room as you can to the emergency vehicle as well as to the first responders. In Oregon, if you fail to comply, actually you're subject to a $355 fine. So please, let's be safe out there and move over for our first responders. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul. A couple of announcements. First of all, we're moving forward with the purchase of a piece of property for the Willamette Water Supply Program. If you'll recall, at the October 19th, 2016 TVWD board meeting, the board approved the purchase and sale agreement for the purchase of a parcel of property from Calvin and Mayho Tonabe on Cooper Mountain. The property is being acquired as part of the Willamette Water Supply System. Since that time, the supply program staff, Dave and his team, have been working to complete what we call the due diligence process, doing the research to verify the suitability of this piece of property for its intended use associated with the supply system. That due diligence work is now complete, and the finding was that the program team recommends we proceed with essentially closing on that sale for the purchase and sale agreement that you'd previously approved. So with that, next week I will be executing on behalf of the district the final purchase of that piece of property. And again, it's just a major milestone for the supply program team and our partnership with Hillsborough. So again, I thought it was a great announcement, and I wanted to share that with you. Other good news, I think it's good news, I hope it's good news. At the American Water Works Association conference last week, I was appointed to the board of directors for the Water Research Foundation. I only recently learned that I was even being considered for that position, and so I had previously consulted with Commissioners Schmidt and Duggan just to make sure that the board was going to be okay with this, and basically they said, yeah, go forth and do good work, and so I've agreed to go ahead and serve on this board. My role on the board of the Water Research Foundation will include serving as the chair of what's called the Focus Area Council. This is actually a fairly important position within the Water Research Foundation framework because I will be responsible for leading a team that will prioritize and make recommendations for funding of several $million a year of industry-led water research related to issues like water quality and water system management. So I appreciate the board's support for this appointment, and I look forward to continuing to serve in the drinking water industry in this important leadership role. So thank you. Also just announcing that the July work session is canceled. We'd previously scheduled a July work session for Wednesday, July 5th. Given recent changes in the schedule for a couple of projects It turns out that we no longer have an agenda for the July work session. So unless there are any objections by the board, our plan is to go ahead and cancel the July work session. We will still have our regular July meeting on July 19th as scheduled. So we'll still have a regular meeting, just not a work session in July. And last but not least, again, we have our usual standing department report. So in keeping with the district's mission of providing quality water and customer service, Paul Matthews will present the department report this evening.
Good evening again, Commissioners. For the Finance Department, we are a service department to the other groups within the district, and in a way we're there to help them do their jobs as efficiently as possible. Because of the upcoming public hearing that we're going to have on the budget, I'm going to keep this department report very short, although the topic and the people involved are quite important. I want to talk about the budget, finance, and treasury functions that we have here. Depending on the task that is underway, the team consists of 3 or 4 people, and it's led by Todd Burton, who's our budget officer. As part of the, the budget team leads the process that culminates in the approved budget that the Budget Committee approved in May last month, as you'll be considering for adoption tonight. Running that process and pulling it together is quite a big job, and on the biennial basis, that occupies quite a bit of their time and responsibilities. But in addition to running the budget process, the team also monitors the expenditures within the district throughout the biennium to make sure they're, first of all, compliant with the budget and also in the interest of the district's ratepayers. Part of that effort is working closely with the engineering team on monitoring and establishing the capital projects for the district and tracking the expenditures. The finance team, actually, when we're looking at those tasks, it includes maintaining the district's 30-year financial forecast, planning for the issuance of long-term debt, and also leading the district's rate processes and STC studies. And you might remember that last fall, we actually this team led the Rate Advisory Committee, successful engagement of citizens in that process as well. And the finance team, last, I want to highlight that they conduct business case evaluations for many of the proposals of the district to make sure that, again, it's cost-effective and efficient that we engage those things, as well as the team undertakes special projects for the CEO and the CFO as we evaluate things for the district. The last responsibility I want to highlight here is the treasury responsibilities. First, the team manages the investments of the district's portfolio, and that's an important task to make sure we earn a return on our money, again, to offset the cost to our ratepayers, but also keep those investments secure and safe. So that's a large and important part of that, as well as maintaining the investment policies that are required by law and making sure that we're compliant with those policies. The Treasury team also manages the banking relationships that we have, and we have a lot of banking relationships. As a business of our size, we do quite a bit of banking, as well as the day-to-day cash management, making sure we have the right money at the right place at the right time. So I'm proud of the good work that the team does and how that work has resulted in cost savings for our ratepayers and the preservation of the district's financial assets. So that concludes the department report. I'm available to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if there are no questions, that concludes the CEO and management staff report for the evening.
Questions, concerns, comments? Okay. Commissioner Communications, reports of meetings attended. Commissioner Doan?
Let's see. I attended a budget workshop on May 31st, work session on June 6th, the Iowa Business Association meeting on June 8th. There was an executive session of the Joint Water Commission where we approved a change order on a meter installation. Change order was about 10% of the cost of the contract, or about $50,000. June 12th through 15th, I was at the National AWWA meeting where I learned a lot of stuff about rates, and then tonight's meeting on the 21st.
Thank you, Commissioner Duggan.
I also attended the budget meeting we had on May 31st. On June the 6th, I attended our work session where we talked about our branding initiative and our water rates update. On the 7th of June, I went to the Regional Water Providers Consortium board meeting where we elected a new president, and it ended up vote going to Russ Axelrod. He's the Westland mayor and also representative from the South Fork Water Board. We also got updates on various initiatives from the consortium. One of the interesting things is that the Portland area has always been in the running for grants, urban area security initiative grants that pay for preparing for emergencies, including a subduction zone earthquake or other cooperative efforts. And Portland's always been kind of on the cusp of whether our metropolitan area qualifies as being eligible for those grants. It typically goes to the 25 top metro areas that are determined to have the most likely threat for terrorism or some other security issue. And we've always been like 24, 25, and the cutoff had been at 25. Well, now this year there was concern that we wouldn't get any money because our ranking dropped to 33 out of the top metro areas in the country. But it just so happened they decided to draw the line at 33. So Portland barely got in for a grant that could end up being worth $2.1 million that can go toward emergency preparedness for the metro region, which for the water providers means maybe another emergency water supply system similar to what we've tested with our other water providers in having the ability to distribute emergency water should there be a disruptive event. And that's pretty much it from the Regional Water Providers Consortium meeting. On June the 12th, I attended an open house put on by staff for replacement reservoir on Grabhorn Road, immediately uphill from Farmington Road, and it was well attended by the neighbors that were right there. I was surprised to see as many people turned out to hear about what was going to happen there, and they seemed overall pretty supportive, but they had the normal type of questions: what's going to happen with traffic, how much noise will there be. But I really got to hand it off to Nick Augustus and the other staff that were present. They were able to answer all the questions and give a very nice presentation. On June the 15th, I represented the district at the Vision Action Network, where they had an award celebration. And in case you don't know, the Vision Action Network is a Washington County group that helps coordinate provision of social services and emergency services. Our district is a member, as well as a number of other public agencies, including Clean Water Services in the various cities. They gave out 2 awards to 2 agencies that provide assistance both in emergency shelters during the winter when there's inclement weather, and then also distributing food and other emergency needs. And that was a very nice celebration. And then tonight's meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Burke?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had an interesting meeting this week on another subject. I didn't put it on my chart here, but it was with 2 representatives of Scott Walker's administration in Wisconsin. And what I found out is that one of them works with, apart from his political work, works for a charity that helps orphanages around the world that are in distress. And he shared with me a water project that he had done for one of them. And I had actually, at the AWWA meeting, which I also attended in June, I collected some information about water systems that were for small communities, villages, and so I was able to provide links to some of this information. He didn't know about the American Water Works Association, and I told him about the Water for People program and some of the other things that they do. So I'm going to be sending him some links and some information, and I'll also pass along his contact information to Brenda Lennox, who's now a person who is, of course, of TVWD, that's now head poobah of the whole international organization. They didn't give her one of those hats, though, like Fred Flintstone wore. And that might be a good political connection for Brenda Lennox as well. So that's one of the neat things about AWWA is that there are ways that participating can have value that you don't expect. And I really enjoyed that. So other than that, I participated in a branding conference call, a follow-up on a branding meeting that we had about ideas related to the rebranding of TVWD. I participated in the budget committee meeting on the 31st, the TVWD workshop previously mentioned on the 6th, the AWWA convention that I mentioned already, and tonight's board meeting. So those are my meetings.
Thank you. I attended the fun annual event of judging the calendars for the 2018 calendars. On the 30th, the 31st, there was the budget meeting and regular board meeting tonight besides Philadelphia. Okay. Now, are there any topics to be raised by commissioners?
One other thing I wanted to mention, I'm sorry if you don't mind, is Philadelphia was also one of the things that I saw was, and my wife, was Independence Hall in the Constitution Center. And, you know, we're water commissioners, we're not U.S. senators, but we do swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. So I just want to remark it was meaningful to me to actually go there and, you know, see firsthand what I'm swearing to protect. So it was great for that too.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. Public comment. Time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board, and I see no members of the public here. So the public hearing, consider adopting resolution number 23-17, adopting the budget and making appropriations for the Tualatin Valley Water District for the 2017-2019 biennium. And staff report by Todd and Mark.
All right, good evening. Well, again, we've gone through a sort of long, thoughtful process in terms of developing the budget. So what we will do this evening is essentially lay out that process for you, what it is that we think we are going to be funding through the budget that is before you. And then Todd will, in painstaking detail, number by number, word by word, essentially present the budget for your final consideration. So with that, Todd will kind of give the background, I will provide some overall comments, and then Todd will go into the detail associated with the proposed budget. Take it away, Todd.
Thank you, President Schmidt, and thank you, Mark. Good evening. I'm very happy to be at this point of our budget process this evening, and as I was thinking about being prepared to come up here tonight, I was looking around the table of how many new members of the management team we have. I know Pete filling in for Carrie Pack, but she joined the district during the biennium, as well as Andrew Carlstrom, Matt now in his position, as well as bringing Clark on as full-time, as well as Dave Kraska. So I'm kind of a veteran here. In fact, I think I might be here longer than anybody in this, which kind of odded me out here.
Do
Anyway.
rocks get as old as you've been here?
Yeah, I know. I've only been here 10 years, 11 years. Anyway, we do, just to review the agenda for tonight's item for consideration of Resolution 2317. We have a brief staff report. We'll begin by some comments by Mark as the CEO. I will be brief to go over the approved appropriation summary for the 2017-19 biennium. We will then ask the board to hold a public hearing, have your discussions, and take an action on the approved 2017-19 budget. We are here, along with the members of the management team, to answer any questions that you might have. As far as the budget process to date, it really began for the staff back in the fall, as well as the board. The board was engaged in the strategic planning process that culminated to a number of recommendations in the budget that we reviewed during the budget process. The public outreach efforts began more in the early part of the spring. We did a fair amount of outreach through our website, extensive use of our website and budget information page. We issued a press release. We did a number of public notices published both in the Oregonian and the Washington County website, including our most recent publication, which was a summary of the approved budget on June the 9th, as well as a notice of tonight's budget action and public hearing. We conducted outreach to the district's key customers through the Key Customer Program. We engaged the district's rate advisory committee that was quite active through the summer and early part of the winter time. We also did outreach to, sent letters to all citizens who testified at the last two water rate hearings. It's important to note that the Budget Committee consisted of 10 members, the 5 commissioners of the district's board, as well as 5 citizens who are domiciles of the district. And we kept you busy during this process. In mid-March, we took the Budget Committee on a tour that looked at both facilities that were completed during the last biennium, including the Ridgewood View Pump Station and Reservoir Project. We visited the site of the Grabhorn Reservoir, which is a key capital project for the upcoming biennium. And Dave Kraska and his team led the Budget Committee through a tour of not only the district of the Willamette Water Supply Program office, but also some key sites along the project route, particularly related to the pipeline. We held 2 workshops, one in March and one in late April, and cover a number of topics, including the district's financial position, the direction that we received from the CEO for budget preparation at the staff level, a review of the district's 30-year financial forecast results, and then we did much more detailed dives into a couple of key areas, including the 2017-19 Willamette Water Supply Program budget that Dave Kraska provided. Mark presented the initiatives that served as some of the key drivers for the district's operating budget request, as well as Kerry Pack, Chief Engineer, provided an overview of the district's in-district capital improvement plan. We wrapped up those workshops with a summary that we would then present in a more formal way to the Budget Committee for its consideration at its Budget Committee meeting on May the 31st. We distributed and posted the proposed budget about 2 weeks prior to that meeting. We did receive a series of questions from Budget Committee members and clarifications, and thank you, finding some of my typos. So we were able to respond to a number of those. The Budget Committee had a formal presentation of the proposed budget on the 31st. All 10 Budget Committee members were in attendance and provided unanimous approval of the budget. Since that time, we've published the approved version of the budget, which included many of the clarifications requested by the Budget Committee, which brings us to tonight's hearing. So with that overview of the public process that we've done to date, I'd like to turn it back over to Mark for his comments.
Thank you very much, Todd. Given all of the work that we've done to date, the multiple meetings that we've had, and the many presentations that you've patiently sat through in terms of each of the department budgets, I really plan to try to keep my comments fairly brief this evening, just because you've heard it all now at least twice and sometimes 3 times. And so I don't think we need to belabor all the details, but there are a few points that I really want to highlight. And that goes back to the first comment that we made back in March, and that is that we are starting the 2017-19 biennium in a very strong financial position. Paul Matthews explained that not only do we have a significant war chest at this point of cash that we have saved up to help fund the Willamette Water Supply Program, we have a very strong revenue forecast, and again, that comes from both water sales as well as system development charges. I think it's very notable that we are debt-free, that we have no outstanding debt at this time. That not only reflects how we've been effective in managing our financial resources, but also creates a tremendous opportunity for our organization in terms of how we craft future bond sales that we will need to embark on to be able to help fund the completion of the Willamette Water Supply System. And again, we do 30-year financial planning, and that 30-year financial planning has really been the cornerstone to allow us to project future rate increases necessary to be able to fund not just this budget, but completion of the Willamette Water Supply Program. One of the big challenges that we have in terms of developing the budget that's before you is managing or essentially balancing all of the objectives that we have. There are a lot of things that we would like to do, not the least of which is ongoing operations and maintenance of the system. That is our core business, and so it really becomes job one. But also to move forward with the Willamette Water Supply Program. It is a tremendous financial investment on the part of our ratepayers, and so we're trying to do all of that at the same time. We have some very daunting information technology needs. We are replacing our current payment provider system. We've heard from our customers they don't like it. It is not in keeping with our customer service standards, and so we're making that happen. And as soon as we wrap that up, Andrew Carlstrom and his team are going to move headlong into the process of beginning the planning for replacing our billing system, and you'll hear a little bit about that here in a few minutes. And then we have the district initiative process, and these are really sort of our priorities for moving the district ahead, because after all, if we're not moving ahead, then we're falling behind. And so we want to continue to advance the organization, and this is the part that we do that. As Todd mentioned, I provided sort of a vision based on consultation with you in an earlier work session in our strategic planning process in terms of our direction for the 2017-19 budget. They're largely listed here. We will continue to fund ongoing work on the Willamette Water Supply Program. We need to continue to make investments in the system in terms of investments in our capital improvement program, as well as investments in the expansion of the Joint Water Commission water treatment plant. Given these significant financial demands of the capital program, I was pretty much ruthless in terms of holding the line on our operating budget.
Ruthless. You had no Ruths.
I had no Ruth.
That's right.
Ruthless. Yes, thank you. So we are maintaining the current service levels. We are not enhancing the services that we currently provide, other than the initiatives that we will talk about. That we have added one position to our portfolio of staff, and that is largely to help Andrew and his team associated with the billing system implementation, and we want to make sure we're successful in that, so we've dedicated a staff person for that, as well as adding a limited term position to support IT, and in fact consulting with our interim IT director. He has assured me that we're probably going to find a way to do this without hiring that person. And so it's unfortunate that Commissioner Bagnall isn't here, because she'd expressed concern about the limited term nature of the position. We're already getting in front of that and trying to hold the line and not growing staff. That's been a real cornerstone of this program. We do need to accommodate increased costs. Our purchase water costs are projected to increase about $3.8 million over the biennium, including purchase water costs from the City of Portland, as well as increasing costs from the Joint Water Commission. And so we've included that in the budget. And then last but not least, to fund the strategic initiatives that we'll list here in just a minute. And last but not least, we've made a couple of structural changes to the budget in terms of creating an information technology division, or department rather than a division. So we've elevated the visibility and accountability of information technology within our organization. And we've made a minor adjustment in terms of moving communications into customer service to better link communications with customers. So what's in the 2017-19 proposed budget? Well, I thought it would be important to kind of think in terms of, well, what are we going to do with that money? And so what we've listed here are some of the many activities that are funded through the proposed budget, or the approved budget, and not the least of which is our core business of delivering 16 billion gallons of water over the course of the biennium. Adding new mains, we're going to work with our partners with the cities as well as the county, and take advantage of putting mains in road projects where that's possible. We'll do ongoing flushing to maintain high service levels, as well as exercising valves and hydrants. We are expanding our lead and copper program based on your direction to provide TVWD specific monitoring rather than being part of a joint monitoring program. We will prepare and deliver over 1 million bills, do 1.3 million water meter readings. We're all about partnerships at this point. It's a tremendous opportunity to achieve economies of scale and leverage our relationship with our partners, and that's key in terms of making those dollars stretch as far as possible, and then providing resources to do things like responding to main breaks and weather emergencies and other events that occur during the course of the biennium. So how do we figure out our priorities? Well, again, the Willamette Water Supply Program is really a key driver and a major priority for the organization, as well as investing in our in-district capital. And so what you see in the center picture is an inside shot of the Grabhorn Reservoir with scaffolding that is currently supporting the roof. That reservoir is scheduled to be replaced over the next year and a half, 2 years. And then our strategic initiative process. I keep mentioning that, and we've talked about it several times in terms of really the cyclic planning process that the district follows to identify what are the issues that we need to be prepared for and anticipate that are headed our way in the future. And this is a process that allows us to scan the horizon, figure out what our priorities are going to be, and then identify ways to be able to fund those efforts. And so that culminates in a process that has key projects as well as those district initiatives. So I'll talk a little bit about each one of those key drivers. And the first is the Willamette Water Supply Program, or WWSP. This is a list of basically activities that Dave and his team have identified for the 2017-19 biennium. The fact of the matter is there is a lot of pipeline that is going to be going into the ground and will be designed over the course of the biennium. A lot of progress is being made in terms of bringing that project to fruition. In terms of the in-district capital program, you heard from Carrie Pack previously in terms of explaining all of the priorities associated with the capital program, but it includes JWC projects, the Grabhorn Reservoir project, a couple of pump stations that need additional upgrades, a lot of pipeline projects, both in terms of just ongoing renewal and replacement of pipelines, as well as providing additional capacity in a key area that's a Metzger redevelopment area. We also, through the CIP, fund our ongoing maintenance of the fleet in terms of replacement of key fleet vehicles and equipment, as well as some of our facilities upgrades that are required. And then in terms of strategic initiatives, we've listed both the district initiatives and key projects here. But again, the fact of the matter is we're going to be very busy doing this work over the next 2 years. One other piece that I wanted to bring forward is to make sure that we're aware of the customer information system replacement. This is a very key initiative that we're going to be undertaking over the next really 3 years. And so it will continue beyond the biennium, but all of the really fundamental work in terms of planning, design, and initial implementation will occur over the next 2 years, and all of that work is funded through this budget. It includes assessing our current billing system and our current billing practices, making sure that we're being responsive to our customers' needs, and then implementing new commercial off-the-shelf technology and software that will allow us to ultimately be a more nimble organization into the future in addressing our long-term billing needs and the needs of our customers. And I think it's also notable, this is another partnership project. We are partners with Clean Water Services in terms of their support for also replacing the billing system. And again, that's just leverage that allows us to stretch our dollars that much further. And then a big part of this whole process is improved ongoing outreach, not just in terms of outreach associated with rates, but all of the things that we do to make sure that customers have a better opportunity to understand the value of the service that we provide to our community. And so what's listed on the table there is the schedule that we've created for the public outreach process associated with the rate plan. And so in many ways that started back in March with the development of this budget, will really kind of show up under the spotlight in terms of August 2nd, when we will hold our first rate process open house, another rate open house after that, and then a public hearing before you at the August board meeting and so on. So much more intensive outreach process associated with rates this year than we've ever had before. And with that, I will turn it over to Todd, who will give us the blow-by-blow, excruciating detail associated with the budget, which he tells me he's obligated to do.
I promise I won't be excruciating. You've seen this before, but thank you, Mark.
Oh, my pleasure.
You've seen this slide before. The district appropriates, and this is what's contained in the resolution tonight, appropriates activities by fund, both expenditures as well as other resources for the budget. The next series of slides are really identical to what we shared with the Budget Committee on May the 31st. For the 2017-19 biennium, the approved budget appropriates expenditures, transfers, and contingency resources for the 6 funds listed here. We do have at least one dormant fund right now, our Revenue Bond Debt Service Fund, which we are not requesting appropriation. As Mark alluded to, we are currently debt-free. It's likely, as we begin to develop the debt or continue to define the debt program, and depending on the timing of the expenditures, particularly for the water supply program, we may be coming back to the board during this period for a supplemental budget. And that may actually involve not only the debt service fund that we have now, but possibly other funds related to that. But right now, there's no appropriation requested. The general fund. The approved expenditure level, approved expenditures to the Budget Committee is about $77.7 million. Overall, the appropriation is $160 million. That includes transfers to other funds of about $67 million and a contingency of $15 million. The contingency is available to the board and can only be accessed by board action during the biennium period. The general fund really accounts for all of the district's operations, including all its personnel services, its materials and services, including purchased water, a small amount for capital equipment and replacement, as well as a relatively new appropriation item, which is special payments. Those, as the board would recall, are for the rights-of-way fees that are now assessed by the cities of Tigard, Beaverton, and Hillsborough. They are a pass-through charge to customers who live within the corporate boundaries of those cities, but are district customers. The personal services budget itself is up about 15.2% for the biennium, or 7.3% per year. As Mark mentioned, it includes salary adjustments, merit-based salary adjustments, the district's benefits, as well as the 2 new positions that are requested, the customer service business analyst and the limited term IT systems administrator. Something that I always like to highlight is we have a lot of partners, and the partners help share some of these costs. And in personal services in particular, for utility billing, meter reading, and some of the management services we provide to the Valley View Water District, as well as our support to the water supply program, about 15% of the personal services budget, or about $5.6 million, will be reimbursed through these other resources, not directly through rates paid by our district customers. Materials and services for the biennium are up about 11%. However, if you take purchased water out, the materials and services is down about 1.8%, or relatively flat. Again, this really attests to Mark's direction to maintain current service levels and find savings where we can in order to direct resources to some of our capital project priorities. The district materials and services budget is also supported by our partners, particularly in meter reading and billing. They help pay for particularly some of the merchant fee costs and bill processing costs, as well as customers who voluntarily participate in the district's backflow testing program. In total, that's about 1.5% of the $1.5 million of the district's materials and services budget, again, coming through other resources. The Capital Improvements Fund accounts for the district's in-district capital improvement projects. Mark mentioned the largest one for the next biennium is the replacement of the Grabhorn Reservoir. It also includes our fleet as well as some of our facility expenses, and it also includes all of our meter sales, which again are charged through separate fees for new customers connecting to the district. The Capital Improvement Fund also reflects the district's participation in the Joint Water Commission. Its total appropriation is $38.6 million, which is very close to the, quite similar, at least for the in-district part, the district expenditures are very close to what we appropriated in the current budget. The difference really being transfers to the Capital Reserve Fund in the current biennium aren't required for this biennium. But overall, the Capital Improvements Fund is relatively flat compared to 2015-17. The Water Supply Program Fund, this accounts for the Willamette Water Supply Program itself. Its total appropriation is $139.4 million. Dave Kraska reviewed the Willamette Water Supply Program in detail in one of the budget workshops, as well as a lot of information on the tour that the Budget Committee took. This includes, resources include Hillsborough share, which is significant. About $55.3 million of the budget appropriation will be covered by the City of Hillsborough and their participation. Some of the money budgeted in this fund will, as I mentioned earlier, for the general fund personal services budget, will go back to support the district's own personal services that are part of the program, as well as our overhead. Net expenditures to the district are about $79.6 million for the biennium. The Capital Reserve Fund is simply a fund that we hold reserves for current and future uses. The total appropriation is $122.7 million, and they are these monies are transferred to the Water Supply Program, as well as to the district's Capital Reserve Fund, Capital Improvement Fund, excuse me, in the amounts that are shown in the slide. We also receive resources in this fund, including SDC revenues, which has been a very robust revenue for the district over the last biennium. Fees that are paid for meter installations, interest earnings, and transfers from other funds, primarily the general fund to represent the district's portion of the Willamette Water Supply Program. We do anticipate an ending fund balance of the biennium of about $28 million in this particular fund. Finally, the district also manages two relatively very small funds in comparison to the other funds. The Willamette River Water Coalition Fund. This is a fund that is set by the Willamette River Water Coalition Governing Board, which includes the City of Tualatin and the City of Sherwood, I believe. Are those Tigard. And Tigard. And TVWD, who provides managing services for the WRWC. Its requested budget appropriation, again, we're reflecting what the WRWC board has approved is $98,900. It's really, I think, a reflection of the district's transition to its activities around the Willamette Water Supply Program. As this one is less of a active fund compared to that.
And some remarkably sound management practices on the part of.
We saved a lot of money by bringing Mark on as the managing director. And Paul. District does pay dues into this fund, and they're budgeted about $40,000 for the biennium. Finally, we have the district's Customer Emergency Assistance Fund. This is a fund that we did establish in the 2015-17 biennium. This is another activity that we took in-house. We've provided customer emergency assistance to district customers who were qualified through eligibility criteria for many years. We took some of the administration of this program in-house to save the district's money, as well as to be able to provide more direct assistance to the qualified customers. Resources come from customers themselves who make donations, board members, staff donations, not only from the district staff, but also staff at Clean Water Services and the City of Beaverton. We do contract with a third party to determine eligibility. The proposed, I should say approved on that, the approved budget is $49,000, and that's really based on the trends and our experience of this fund for the first 2 years of its existence, which is the current biennium. The district covers overhead and some of the administration. Overall, this is a summary of the appropriations for the 2017-19 approved budget of $460.9 million. This really just summarizes the 6 funds that I just reviewed with the board. We do like to show this slide, which shows really the breakdown between expenditures versus appropriations. Total expenditures are $250.4 million. Again, we have contingency in the general fund as well as in the Willamette River Water Coalition Fund that can be accessed. And just moving money between the funds of $195.5 million is a significant appropriation item, but not an expenditure. In closing, as Mark commented, we are very pleased to report to the board that we are starting the biennium again in a very strong financial position. Staff anticipates that as Mark again mentioned, the upcoming biennium presents big challenges in balancing the district's priorities. The approved budget maintains current service levels, funds our ongoing commitments to the Willamette Water Supply Program. It continues our commitment to infrastructure maintenance and development within our own district boundaries and through our CIP project. And it funds district initiatives based on the strategic planning and the direction of the board. Staff is recommending adoption of the Resolution 23-17, which adopts the approved budget. On behalf of the staff at TVWD, I want to particularly thank again the citizen members of the Budget Committee for their commitment, time, and expertise and service. I'd like to thank the district customers to whom we serve, to President Smith and the Board of Commissioners for your leadership and direction. And I'd like to thank the staff that I've had the pleasure to work with over the last several months and putting together this budget. I know is probably a tyrant at times to get information, but it's a great team, and I'm very proud to be part of that team. So with that, that concludes our staff presentation. I'd like to return the meeting back to you, President Smith.
Thank you, Mark and Todd. Okay, now I am opening the public meeting hearing on item 1A, called in accordance with ORS Chapter 294 for consideration of the approved biennial budget for the years 2017 to 2019. Is there any testimony in support? Hearing none. Is there any testimony in opposition? Hearing none. The public hearing is now closed. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 23-17, adopting the budget and making appropriations for the Tualatin Valley Water District for the 2017-2019 biennium?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve.
I second.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I just want to comment that this is a remarkable document. Considering all we're doing, it is an incredibly austere document, and I'm very happy that we were able to condense things to make this as painless as possible.
Mr. Chair, I also like to comment on the fact that there was no testimony at all tonight. Frankly, I'd like to see more testimony, but the staff has gone above and beyond the call of making the process known. I think the citizens that participated on the board were all very deeply engaged and did a lot of heavy lifting during the process. And I think on one hand, while I'd like to see more people testifying, the fact that we've gone through this project and had such a broad public engagement process and still don't have people here, to me signifies that the public has confidence in the budget committee, the citizens members, the staff, and the board. And I think this is, more than anything else, a sign of a very healthy district. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could offer one last comment related to the budget, and that is to thank Todd Burton, our budget officer. Todd Todd, first of all, I will agree with him. He could be a tyrant at times. But the fact of the matter is, it was always for the good of the district and for making the budget document and the budget process as effective as it proved to be. And so Todd is really a treat to work with. He really made all of our jobs easier from the standpoint of being so organized and structured and keeping us on task all the way through. So thank you very much, Todd. We could not have done it without you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any item requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require a discussion. Okay, do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Business agenda. Okay, I see no public present here. Consider adopting resolution number 25-17 designating a program reserve amount and unrestricted assets.
So as you know, I typically try to provide a brief overview of each of the agenda items after they're introduced to allow the staff to then provide a detailed explanation and staff report. The next two items are frankly beyond me in terms of the level of detail and financial complexity associated with them. And I say that with utmost respect for the work that Paul Matthews and his team have done. And so with that, I am just going to turn it over to Paul and let him field the next two issues rather than try and bumble along and offer some lame explanation of what they're really about.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, President Schmidt, Commissioners. These really are housekeeping items that we're addressing tonight. The first is the designation of program reserve amounts and unrestricted assets. Two issues that we want to talk about as relates to this. One is the designation of the program reserve, and I need to define what that is, but it's all related to the Willamette Water Supply Program and the intergovernmental agreement that we have with the City of Hillsborough. The second one is related to it, which is the identification of our unrestricted assets. So before we get into the details, I want to talk a little bit about what are restricted and what are unrestricted assets. Following government accounting standards, especially those established by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, statement number 34, the district presents its assets as either restricted or unrestricted. The definition comes down to control, whether or not the board and the district controls the assets or not. As we talk about the program reserve amount and the commitment that we have with the City of Hillsborough through the intergovernmental agreement that we have with them, some of our assets will be sequestered and will not be available to us directly. They'll be restricted assets. We have some other restricted assets as well. But we want to identify those unrestricted assets of the district. A couple reasons for doing that. First of all, it needs to be portrayed accurately in our comprehensive annual financial report, and our auditors want to see the board's participation in it. And secondly, is future funding. Bond rating agencies like ours to have unrestricted assets, to have assets that they can spend to meet the debt service needs that they might have. So we're structuring our balance sheet and going through the steps that will provide that for the district. I want to take us back to the intergovernmental agreement that we have with the City of Hillsborough that kicked off this process. Part of that required that we establish a reserve account and a reserve amount. And back in May of 2016, we brought this to the board and you acted and adopted Resolution 09-16, which put in the regulatory framework that is required by this IGA to manage these program reserves. So the couple things we want to define in there. First, the program reserve amount. That is an appropriation of the capital outlay for the program reserve. The budget that you just adopted had an appropriation for capital outlay that equaled the program reserve amount that was established through the WWSP. So we have done that part as part of the budget, and now we're following on here put the appropriate regulatory limits in place that were part of the intergovernmental agreement we have with Hillsborough. The program reserve account is an account within TVWD's capital reserve fund where we're going to sequester that money and we're going to hold it there. We have the option of using the existing credit facility rather than cash to meet the requirements of the intergovernmental agreement. This year, we won't, or this biennium, we won't be needing to use that credit facility. So they're restricted because there are certain steps that we must follow in order to access the money that's in these restricted reserves. First, it needs to be recommended by the WWSP program director. So a need is identified within the program that isn't in the budget, but is necessary for the program's completion or to keep the program on schedule so we don't have costly delays. The program director, Mr. Kraska here, would then recommend that those expenditures come from this program reserve. It would be reviewed by the managing agency, which is TVWD, to make sure that it's consistent and in the best interest of the partnership. And then finally, it will be approved by the WWSP Executive Committee, which consists of our CEO, Mark Knudsen, as well as the Water Department Director from the City of Hillsborough. So those are the steps that are required to access this money. Now, the resolution that we adopted back in May of 2016 had some other requirements in place. We don't need to go through those, but I just want to make the point that the resolution that we're adopting tonight, that we proposed tonight, meets those requirements and implements those consistent with the resolution you adopted back in May of 2016. So as we've gone through this, a couple findings that we wanted to highlight here. First of all, the 2017 approved budget, when I put this presentation together, it was just an approved budget. As of a few minutes ago, you just created an adopted budget, so it would be the adopted budget there. It includes appropriations of $4.3 million for the program reserve amount. That's both for TVWD as well as the City of Hillsborough share. TVWD share is $2.6 million. TVWD share will be funded with cash or cash equivalents, which is the words that we use to mean money that we have available to us. Resolution number 25-17, the one we're considering now, restricts the use of that program reserve amount, that $2.6 million, consistent with the requirements of the previous resolution you adopted in May of 2016. Furthermore, this meets the GASB definition of a restricted asset because we alone can't take action. It will require the three steps that I identified earlier. In addition to those assets, we do want, for the sake of our auditors, to have the board identify and designate our unrestricted assets. So we talk about our restricted assets that we have, the program reserve that I just talked about. The other restricted assets we have actually are, for example, our SDC balances that we have. System development charges, the revenue from that can only be spent on certain capital projects. So we're restricted by state law, and they'll be identified as such. We have certain other items, customer donations or to the Customer Emergency Assistance Program, for example, is a restricted asset because it can only be used for that purpose to offset the cost of donations for our customers in need. And there are some other minor items, deposits that we get from customers or developers, those things that will be restricted as well. Generally, all the other net assets of the district will be unrestricted, and the resolution that we're looking at tonight declares just that. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you might have before making our final recommendation. Questions on this?
Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, do I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 25-17 designating a program reserve amount and unrestricted assets? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes. Okay, consider adopting resolution number 26-17, transferring appropriations from the general fund to general operating contingency to the general fund's special payments for the biennial budget period 2015 to 2017. Staff report?
I'll just proceed then. The last item is also a housekeeping item, and as we close up the current fiscal year, we want to make sure that we've got all of our money in the right buckets with the right color, and this will essentially change one of the appropriations that we have in our budget. So what we're asking to do is actually transfer an appropriation from the general fund's general operating contingency, which Todd talked about in the coming fiscal year's budget at $50 million. We want to have the board change the appropriation from that to the special payments, which we've talked about as well. I'll talk about why we're asking for that, why we're requesting the transfer appropriation, as well as the process that we go through, and I'll answer any questions that you might have. This is all about the rights-of-way fees that we've imposed on our citizens. And as you might remember, actually at the supplemental budget in April, the board adopted a supplemental budget that created a new appropriations category called special payments. Now, this is new to the district, but it is not at all new to local budget law. This is a common designation of an appropriation where we collect money and as a pass-through, in this case, to the cities. Beaverton and Hillsborough implemented their right-of-way fee in October of 2016, and Tiger just implemented it May 1st of 2017. The fees vary by the cities involved, but those are monies that we're collecting from the customers and we are going to pass through to the cities. Special payments include payments of tax. This is a quote right out of the local budget law. Special payments include payments of taxes, fees, and charges collected by one entity, in this case, the Tualatin Valley Water District, and then made to another organization on a pass-through basis, in this case, the cities that we just talked about. It was a new appropriation category that we adopted with the supplemental budget in April of 2019. At that time, we adopted an appropriation of $274,000. As we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year, the special payments actually are somewhat higher than that. We're asking that we transfer $100,000 of general operating contingency to the special payment category, so as we close the fiscal year, we'll be assured that we will have sufficient appropriation in special payments to comply with the Oregon local budget law. So with that, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns? Okay, do I have a motion and a second to adopt a resolution number 26-17, transferring appropriations from the general fund general operating contingency to the general fund special payments for the biennial budget period 2015 to 2017?
Mr. Chair, I so move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is, motion passes. There being no further business before the board, this meeting is adjourned.